They're psychologically unprepared for this kind of warfare. The words echoed through the command chamber like a prophecy. They have never faced an enemy they couldn't understand. Silence followed. No one challenged the statement. Because everyone aboard the flagship knew it was true. Warlord Thex stood at the center of the enormous command chamber aboard his flagship, Dominion's Wrath. The living walls pulsed with faint crimson light, as though the ship itself possessed a heartbeat. It wasn't built. It had been grown. Every corridor, every weapon, every engine was part of a single colossal organism bred solely for war. Before him floated a massive tactical hologram, 800 capital ships. An ocean of biological warships stretched across the display, each one shaped like a monstrous predator drifting through the darkness. Their armored shells were alive. Their weapons breathed. Their engines pulsed like gigantic hearts. Around them swarmed thousands more vessels. Attack cruisers, scout organisms, interceptor swarms, living carriers that birthed new fighters in the middle of battle. Support organisms that repaired damaged ships by consuming fallen enemies. It was the largest armada the Krex Dominion had assembled in its entire history. A fleet built for only one purpose: extermination. Thex had gathered every major battle group under his command. Not to conquer a planet. Not to suppress a rebellion, but to erase the mysterious force that had dared interfere with Krex expansion. He stared at the display without blinking. For centuries, he said quietly, the galaxy has learned to fear us. No civilization has ever stopped a Dominion campaign, and no civilization ever will. A voice interrupted his thoughts. Status report, Warlord. Sub-Warlord Sexadrani stepped forward. Although he tried to hide it, nervousness lingered in every movement. The disaster involving the scout fleet had shaken the Dominion more than anyone wanted to admit. All vessels report combat readiness. He activated another hologram. Biological weapon systems are fully charged. Boarding organisms are prepared for deployment. The warrior castes await your command. Thex gave a slow nod. Everything was ready. Everything, except certainty. His thoughts returned to the reports recovered from the few surviving scout ships. Invisible attackers. Weapons that ignored armor entirely. Ships that simply stopped functioning. Entire crews disappearing without explanation. None of it matched known technology. None of it matched reason. He had dismissed the first reports as fear-induced hallucinations. The second wave reported the same thing. Then the third. Now, he could no longer ignore them. One of the senior tacticians stepped forward. Our analysts believe the enemy relies on psychological warfare. They're trying to make us hesitate. Thex remained silent. Another officer spoke. The enemy fleet is too small to challenge us directly. They'll attempt deception, ambushes, electronic warfare. The room filled with approving clicks. That explanation made sense. It fit everything they understood. Thex slowly looked around the chamber. Then he spoke. No. The room fell silent. They aren't trying to frighten us. They're trying to confuse us. He enlarged the battle recordings from the scout engagement. The impossible footage replayed across the holographic display. Enemy ships appearing where sensors showed empty space. Weapons striking without detectable energy signatures. Entire battle formations collapsing before firing a single shot. Thex narrowed his eyes. This enemy doesn't fight to destroy our ships. They fight to destroy our confidence. His words lingered heavily over the command crew. If our warriors stop trusting what they see, if our officers stop trusting their instruments, then our fleet will destroy itself long before the enemy finishes the job. A heavy silence settled across the bridge. For the first time, the Krex Dominion was preparing to fight something it did not understand. An uneasy feeling spread through the chamber. Not fear, something worse. Doubt. Thex finally turned back toward the stars beyond the viewing window. Set course. His voice carried the same authority that had led countless victories. Find this enemy. A pause. Then, almost to himself, he whispered, and let us discover whether monsters truly exist. far beyond the edge of Krex-controlled space. Hidden beneath the shadow of a dead moon, human warships waited in complete silence. Their engines were cold, their weapons offline, invisible to every known sensor, patiently watching, patiently waiting, because the first rule of human warfare was simple. The battle begins long before the first shot is fired. It all seemed like the ravings of frightened minds. But Thexcraft had not conquered dozens of worlds by ignoring intelligence reports, no matter how strange they seemed. "Have you implemented the new security protocols?" he asked. "Yes, Warlord. All ships are running continuous bioscans. Pheromone communication is being monitored for disruption. Guard rotations have been tripled." "Good. Whatever these creatures are, they will not catch us unprepared again." The Krex fleet began its approach to the Vani system, confident in their overwhelming numerical advantage. From their perspective, they were about to face a small force of unknown aliens who had managed one lucky strike against a scouting party. The lesson would be swift and brutal. They had no idea they were flying into the most carefully prepared trap in human military history. Light years away, Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching his own tactical display with the cold satisfaction of a chess master who had seen 20 moves ahead. The human fleet looked pathetically small compared to the approaching Krex armada. 13 ships against 800. But appearances could be deceiving. "Status of Ghost Division operations," Park asked Commander Kim. "All infiltration teams are in position, Admiral. Colonel Lee reports that critical Krex vessels have been compromised and are ready for coordinated system failures." Park nodded. While the Krex had been massing their fleet and implementing new security measures, the Ghost Division had been busy. Over the past weeks, they had infiltrated dozens of key CRE's vessels, planting molecular disruptors, bioviral agents, and quantum communication scramblers. The enemy had no idea that their own ships had been turned into weapons against them. "What about the civilian evacuations?" Park asked. "Complete, sir. All peaceful species in the region have been relocated to safe positions. The Anani Research Station has been moved to minimum safe distance." Lieutenant Commander Omeno, piloting the stealth corvette Shadow's Edge, checked her instruments as she positioned her ship among the asteroid field at the edge of the system. Her vessel was completely invisible to Craig's sensors, its advanced stealth technology, making it effectively a ghost ship. "Ghost Leader, this is Shadow 1, she reported to Colonel Lee. "I'm in position for target designation." "Acknowledged. Shadow 1. Begin marking priority targets as soon as they enter the kill zone." The kill zone was Admiral Park's masterpiece, a carefully selected region of space where the Krex fleet would be forced to bunch together due to the system's gravitational fields and asteroid obstacles. Once they were properly positioned, the Ghost Division would begin the most devastating military operation in human history. Master Sergeant Byung Min led Bravo Team through the ventilation systems of a massive Kree bioarrier, one of the largest ships in their fleet. They had been inside the vessel for 6 days, living in the spaces between the ship's organic walls, breathing recycled air, and eating emergency rations. The discomfort was irrelevant. Bay had spent 3 months hiding in the volcanic caves of Titan during the insurgency. A few days inside an alien ship was nothing compared to that ordeal. "All charges are set," reported Sergeant Kang Yunji over the comm. "When these go off, their fighter bay will be completely disabled." Similar operations were taking place throughout the Krex fleet. Human operatives who had been invisible passengers for days were now in position to the enemy's most critical systems. The Krex's own security measures had been turned against them. Their reliance on biological sensors made them blind to properly shielded human infiltrators. The trap was nearly complete. Dr. Velnara watched the approaching battle from the safety of the evacuated research station, now positioned several light hours away from the combat zone. Through long-range sensors, she could see the massive Krex fleet moving inexorably toward the tiny human force. "Are we sure the humans know what they're doing?" asked Morani nervously. Belnara studied the tactical display, noting how the human ships were positioned. They weren't running or hiding. Instead, they seemed to be deliberately placing themselves in the path of the Kray's advance, like prey animals offering themselves to predators. But she had learned enough about humans to know that appearances were always deceiving with them. Toad, first contact came when the Krex Vanguard encountered the outermost human picket ships. From the Krex perspective, it looked like a simple matter of overwhelming a few isolated vessels with superior firepower. They opened fire with their bioplasma cannons, expecting to vaporize the human ships in the opening salvo. Instead, they watched in confusion as their weapons passed harmlessly through empty space. The human vessels had simply vanished from sensors, their advanced stealth technology making them effectively invisible. Impossible, hissed. No stealth technology is that advanced. But even as he spoke, his ships began reporting system failures. Communication arrays went offline. Navigation systems began providing false readings. Weapon systems started targeting their own support vessels. The Ghost Division had activated their planted devices. Chaos erupted throughout the Krex fleet as biohips began, malfunctioning in ways their crews couldn't understand. Fighter base sealed shut with their craft still inside. Command centers lost contact with their subordinate vessels. Life support systems began fluctuating wildly. Captain An Hun Woo watched from the bridge of his destroyer as the Krex fleet fell into confusion. His squadron had been positioned at what appeared to be the edge of the battle zone, seemingly preparing to retreat from the overwhelming enemy force. In reality, they were the hammer that would complete the trap. All ships prepare to decloak on my mark, and ordered his squadron commanders. The Krex fleet, struggling with their malfunctioning systems and invisible enemies, suddenly found themselves surrounded. Human warships materialized from empty space on all sides. Their weapons already locked onto critical targets, but the most devastating blow came from within their own ranks. Colonel Lee Jae-sun stood in the command center of the Krex flagship, his stealth armor making him completely invisible to the aliens, frantically trying to regain control of their ship. He had been aboard for 8 days, studying their command structure and waiting for this moment. With surgical precision, he began eliminating Key's commanders, not with weapons, but with targeted bioiral agents that caused rapid system failures in Craig's physiology. To the surviving aliens, it looked like their leadership was simply collapsing from some mysterious plague. Similar assassinations were taking place throughout the fleet, as ghost operatives revealed themselves for the first time, striking at command personnel with weapons and tactics the Krex couldn't counter. The psychological impact was devastating. The Krex had built their entire military doctrine around being the predators, the hunters, the dominant force on any battlefield. Now they found themselves being systematically dismantled by enemies they couldn't see, understand, or fight. Panic spread through their ranks like wildfire. Ships began retreating without orders. Crews abandoned their posts. The carefully coordinated assault formation dissolved into chaos as individual commanders tried to save their own vessels. Vexcraft watched his mighty fleet disintegrate around him, his mind struggling to process what was happening. In less than an hour, 800 capital ships had been reduced to scattered groups of fleeing survivors. How? He whispered to himself. How is this possible? The answer came in the form of Admiral Park's voice over the communication channels, speaking in perfect Krex dialect. This is Admiral Park Deho of the United Earth Starfleet. Your fleet is beaten. Your command structure is compromised. Your ships are crippled. You have one chance to avoid complete annihilation. Surrender immediately and agree to unconditional terms. The XC stared at the communication device in disbelief. The voice belonged to one of the mysterious creatures that had somehow destroyed the most powerful military force in the galaxy. What? What are you? He managed to ask. Park's response would echo through crack space for generations to come. We are what happens when someone threatens peaceful species. We are the peer. Captain Song Ji-hee checked her stealth armor one final time before stepping into the quantum phase chamber. The technology was still new, even by human standards. A fusion of captured alien tech and Earth's most advanced engineering. It would allow her team to board enemy vessels while remaining completely invisible to their sensors. Alpha Team, sound off, she said into her comm. Unit Sergeant Bay ready, came the first response. Corporal Yoon ready. Private Kim ready. Private Lee ready. Song nodded to the technician operating the quantum chamber. Through the transparent walls, she could see the Krex scouting fleet hanging in space like massive insects. 12 bioships, each one the size of a small city, drifting through what they thought was empty space. They had no idea that the Ghost Division had been watching them for 3 days. Remember the mission parameters, Song said to her team. We're not here to destroy these ships. We're here to study the enemy and send a message, learn their weaknesses, understand their technology, and make sure some of them survive to report back to their fleet. The quantum chamber activated, with a sound like reality tearing. One moment, Alpha Team was aboard the human stealth ship, Shadow's Edge. The next, they were materializing inside the largest Krex bioship, their armor rendering them invisible to both optical and sensor detection. Song had seen recordings of Krux vessels, but being inside one was a different experience entirely. The walls were not metal or composite materials, but living tissue that pulsed with alien blood. Organic conduits carried information through bioelectrical impulses. The air was thick with pheromones that would have been overwhelming to most species. Fortunately, human genetic modifications included enhanced filtering systems and resistance to alien biochemistry. "This is disgusting," Private Kim whispered over the comm. "Stay focused," Song replied. "Remember, these things have wiped out entire civilizations. They're dangerous, even if they can't see us." Alpha Team moved through the bioship's corridors with the fluid grace of pack hunters. Their enhanced reflexes and coordination allowed them to navigate the alien environment without triggering any of the ship's biological sensors. The first cracks they encountered was a warrior-class specimen, 3 meters tall, covered in chitinous armor that looked like it could stop conventional weapons. Its multiple eyes swept the corridor constantly, while its clawed hands rested on weapons that seemed to be grown rather than manufactured. Song studied the creature carefully. The cracks were impressive predators by most standards, but they had evolved in a different way than humans. They were hive hunters, adapted for overwhelming individual prey through coordinated swarm attacks. Their entire military doctrine was built around superior numbers and biological advantages that made them predictable. Song activated the first phase of the operation. From her belt, she released a small canister that dispersed synthetic pheromones into the ship's atmosphere. Within minutes, the chemical began interfering with the Krex's natural communication systems. The effect was immediate. The warrior class began displaying signs of confusion, its head turning rapidly as it tried to locate pheromone signals that were no longer making sense. Similar reactions were occurring throughout the ship as the Ghost Division's chemical warfare disrupted the aliens' most basic form of coordination. "Phase 2, Song ordered. Her team split up, each operator taking a different section of the bioship. Their mission was to plant molecular disruptors at key structural points, devices that would weaken the ship's living hull without immediately destroying it. Private Lee encountered a group of smaller Kregs, working at what appeared to be a navigation station. These were worker-class specimens, less heavily armored, but equipped with sophisticated biotools for maintaining the ship's living systems. The workers were already showing signs of distress from the pheromone disruption. They moved erratically, unable to coordinate their tasks properly. Lee placed his disruptors carefully, ensuring they would activate simultaneously to create maximum confusion without immediately crippling the vessel. Meanwhile, Sergeant Bay had found the ship's bioprocessor, the living computer that controlled most of the vessel's functions. It was a massive organ that pulsed with electrical activity, processing information through biological neural networks. Bay placed his disruptors with surgical precision. When they activated, the bioprocessor would begin receiving false information, making the ship sensors report phantom threats and non-existent system failures. The beauty of the Ghost Division's approach was its subtlety. To the CRS, their ship would simply begin malfunctioning for no apparent reason. They would waste time looking for technical problems or biological infections, never suspecting that invisible enemies had infiltrated their vessel. Captain Corporal Yoon's voice came through the comm. "I found something interesting. There's a holding area with captured specimens from destroyed worlds." Song made her way to Yoon's position, moving through corridors that were becoming increasingly chaotic as the Krex crew struggled with their malfunctioning ship. She found Yoon standing outside a chamber filled with transparent biopods. Inside the pods were examples of various species the Krex had encountered, some still alive, others clearly being studied or prepared for consumption. The sight filled Song with cold anger, but she forced herself to remain professional. "Document everything," she ordered. "Command needs to know the full extent of what we're dealing with." As Alpha Team completed their mission, similar operations were unfolding throughout the Kree scouting fleet. Bravo Team, led by Master Sergeant Bayung Men, was systematically sabotaging the fleet's communication vessels. Charlie Team was planting tracking devices that would allow the human fleet to monitor Krex movements. The coordination was perfect, just as it had been during the Titan insurgency. Each team knew exactly what the others were doing, without any visible communication. They moved like parts of a single organism, working together with an efficiency that no hive mind could match. All teams, "Prepare for extraction," Song announced, as the correct ships began showing signs of serious malfunction. The quantum extraction was as smooth as the insertion had been. One moment, the ghost operatives were inside enemy vessels. The next, they were back aboard their stealth ships, watching as the Krek's fleet fell into chaos. The largest bioship suddenly lurched to one side, as its navigation systems failed. Another vessel began firing randomly, as its bioprocessor reported phantom enemies. A third ship's life support system started fluctuating wildly. Panic spread through the Krek's fleet like a virus. The aliens had never encountered an enemy they couldn't see, hear, or detect. Their pheromone-based communication was compromised. Their bioships were malfunctioning, and their crews were reporting impossible attacks from invisible foes. 3 of the 12 ships suffered complete system failures and had to be abandoned. 4 more were so severely damaged that they could barely maintain life support. The remaining 5 managed to retreat, but only after jettisoning most of their equipment and personnel. The survivors who made it back to the main Krek's fleet carried stories that their commanders initially refused to believe. They spoke of invisible attackers who could phase through solid matter. They described weapons that bypassed all their defenses, and enemies who seemed to know their every move before they made it. Warlord Thexgrath received these reports in his command chamber. Deep within the Kree flagship, the massive insectoid had conquered dozens of worlds and eliminated countless species. But these accounts were unlike anything in his experience. Invisible enemies, he hissed to his subordinates. Weapons that phase through armor. This is impossible. But the evidence was undeniable. 12 ships had been reduced to 5 in a matter of hours, and the survivors all told the same story. Something had attacked them from within their own vessels, using technology that the Kreks couldn't understand or counter. For the first time in the Dominion's history, Thecraft felt something he had never experienced before: uncertainty. His forces had always relied on overwhelming firepower and biological superiority. They had never faced an enemy that could strike without being seen, that could infiltrate their ships without triggering any alarms. "Increase fleet security," he ordered. "Double the patrols. I want bioscanners active at all times." But deep down, Thexcraft knew that conventional security measures would be useless against whatever had attacked his scouts. The Kreks were about to learn that there were predators in the galaxy, far more dangerous than anything they had encountered. Meanwhile, aboard the human command ship, Admiral Park reviewed the mission reports with satisfaction. The Ghost Division had accomplished exactly what he had hoped. They had gathered intelligence on Craig's capabilities, while demonstrating that the aliens were not invincible. "What's your assessment, Colonel Lee?" Park asked the Ghost Division commander. Lee J. Sun studied the data streams from the infiltration missions. "They're dangerous but predictable. Their reliance on biological systems makes them vulnerable to biochemical warfare. Their hive mind communication can be disrupted, and their military doctrine is built around overwhelming weaker opponents, not fighting an enemy that can match their capabilities." Park nodded. "Weaknesses we can exploit. More than that, sir. Dr. Velnara found herself unable to sleep as the human fleet continued to grow around their research station. Every few hours, new ships arrived from the direction of Earth. Massive carriers, sleek destroyers, and stranger vessels that defied easy classification. The humans worked with mechanical efficiency, turning the peaceful space around Kepler 442b into a staging area for war. She was reviewing Craig's intelligence reports when Lieutenant Choi Minho knocked on her laboratory door. The young human officer entered with a data pad and what might have been a friendly smile, though Nara found it difficult to read human expressions. "Dr. Admiral Park asked me to brief you on our capabilities," Choi said, settling into a chair that looked far too small for his frame. "He thinks it would help if you understood what you're working with." "I would appreciate that," Velnar replied, though she wasn't sure she really wanted to know just how dangerous her new allies were. Choi activated his data pad, projecting a holographic image of a blue-green world. "This is Earth, our home world. To understand humans, you need to understand where we came from." The planet looked beautiful from space. But as Choi zoomed in, Velnar began to see why the Galactic Council had classified it as a Class Dutine death world. Massive storms raged across the surface. Volcanic eruptions painted the sky with ash. Ice caps advanced and retreated in cycles that would destroy most civilizations. "Our planet has experienced 5 major extinction events," Choi explained. "Each one killed between 70 and 96% of all life. The species that survived had to be incredibly adaptable and tough. Belnara watched images of Earth's predators flash across the display. Massive reptiles with teeth like swords, pack hunters that chased prey across vast distances, ocean predators that could swallow a vanny hole, and humans survived alongside all of these, she asked. We didn't just survive, Choi said, with something that might have been pride. We eventually out-competed them all. By the time we developed advanced technology, we were the dominant predator on a planet full of nightmares. The display shifted to show human history. Endless wars fought with increasingly devastating weapons. Cities burned, armies clashed, and entire civilizations rose and fell in cycles of violence. We fought each other for thousands of years, Joy continued. Every advance in technology became a new weapon. Every scientific discovery was turned into a way to kill more efficiently. That sounds terrible, Velar whispered. It was, but it also made us very good at warfare. Choi's expression grew more serious. When we finally reached space and met other species, we discovered something interesting. Most intelligent life evolved on peaceful worlds. They developed cooperation and harmony because their environments encouraged it. Felnara nodded. That's how the evolved conflict was rare on our world, which makes you wonderful people to know, Choi said. But it also means you're not equipped to deal with true predators like the Cress. The display changed again, showing human military units in action. Nara watched soldiers moving through alien environments, their coordination and tactical awareness unlike anything she had seen before. This brings us to the Ghost Division, Choi said, and his voice took on a tone of deep respect. They're our most elite special operations force, led by Colonel Lee Jung. A new image appeared, a human in black armor that seemed to bend light around itself. The figure was barely visible, like a shadow given form. The Ghost Division earned their name during the Titan insurgency, a conflict between Earth's colonies, Choi explained. Rebel forces had taken control of several moons and were threatening civilian populations. Traditional military tactics weren't working because the rebels knew our standard procedures. Belnara leaned forward, fascinated despite her fear. Colonel Lee's unit went in with a different approach. Instead of announcing themselves or following conventional warfare rules, they simply made the enemy disappear. Guard posts would go silent. Command centers would explode from within. Weapon depots would vanish overnight. The display showed security footage from the conflict. Empty corridors where guards should have been. Equipment mysteriously malfunctioning. Rebels firing at enemies they couldn't see. The rebels started claiming they were being attacked by ghosts, Choi continued. Their survivors, what few there were, swore they had been fighting invisible demons who knew their every move before they made it. How is that possible? Advanced stealth technology, genetic enhancements, and years of training in environments that would kill most species. Choi paused. But mainly, it's because they think like predators in a way that most species can't understand. The display shifted to show technical specifications that made Velnar's head spin. Armor that could phase through solid matter. Weapons that disrupted molecular bonds. Communication systems that worked through quantum entanglement. The Ghost Division operates with perfect coordination, Choi explained. Each operator knows exactly what their teammates are doing without any visible communication. They move like a pack of ancient Earth predators, but with technology that seems like magic to most species. How many of them are there? That's classified, but I can tell you they've never failed a mission. Choi's expression grew darker. They don't just fight wars, Doctor. They end them permanently. A soft chime indicated an incoming message on Choi's datapad. He read it quickly, then looked up with an expression that might have been excitement. They're here, he said simply. Belnara felt her blood chill. The Ghost Division. Colonel Lee's advance team just arrived via quantum jump. They're preparing for insertion into Craig's territory. Through her laboratory window, Velnara could see the human fleet moving into new formations. Ships that had been docked were now spreading out across the system. The massive carriers were launching smaller craft that disappeared from sensors as soon as they cleared the launch bays. What happens now? She asked. Now we show the Kreks what happens when they threaten peaceful species, Choi replied, standing to leave. The Ghost Division is going to conduct reconnaissance missions in Craig's space. They need to understand enemy capabilities before Admiral Park commits the main fleet. As Choi reached the door, Velnar called out to him. Lieutenant, can I ask you something? Of course. Your species, you could have become conquerors. With your capabilities, You could have dominated the galaxy. Why do you choose to protect peaceful species instead? Choi was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. Because we know what it's like to face extinction, Doctor. We've been there ourselves many times. And we've learned that the universe is a better place when it has diversity. When peaceful species like yours can exist alongside predators like us. After he left, remained at her window, watching the human fleet prepare for battle. Somewhere out there, the legendary Ghost Division was getting ready to infiltrate Kree. These invisible warriors who had never known defeat were about to face an enemy that had destroyed dozens of civilizations. For the first time since the crisis began, Felnara felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. The humans were terrifying, but they were terrifying on her side, and if the stories about the Ghost Division were true, the Kreks were about to discover what it meant to be hunted by the galaxy's apex predators. Meanwhile, light years away, Kreks warlord Thexkrath continued his advance toward veiny space, unaware that his scouts had already been marked for elimination. The Kreks had faced many species in their expansion across the galaxy, but they had never encountered anything like the humans. They were about to learn why the Galactic Council had quarantined Earth, and why some species should never be awakened from their peaceful isolation. The Ghost Division was coming, and with them came a new understanding of what true predators could accomplish when they hunted with purpose. 6 months passed like a slow-moving nightmare. Nara had almost given up hope when the sensors began screaming warnings throughout the research station. Something massive was approaching from deep space, moving faster than anything in the Galactic Registry's records. Dr. Manny's mental voice carried pure terror. Something is decloaking near the station. Multiple contacts, unknown configuration. Belnara rushed to the observation deck, her heart pounding. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she watched space itself seem to tear open. First, one ship appeared, then another, then a dozen more. They materialized like ghosts, becoming solid, their dark hulls reflecting no light. The ships were unlike anything she had ever seen. Where Rani vessels were smooth and curved, these were angular and aggressive. Every line suggested violence. Every surface seemed designed for war. The largest ship dwarfed their research station, its hull bristling with weapon ports and sensor arrays. "They're hailing us," reported Kulvani from the communication station. His mental voice shook with fear. "The signal is, it's using our own language protocols. How do they know our communication systems?" "Put them through," Velnara said, trying to keep her voice steady. The main screen activated, showing a face that made several Vani step backward in shock. The creature was clearly a predator. Forward-facing eyes, strong jaw, and an expression of cold intelligence. Its skin was darker than space, and its eyes held the kind of calculating look that Nara had only seen in documentaries about extinct hunting species. "This is Admiral Park Dejo of the United Earth Starfleet," the creature said. Its voice was deep and controlled, each word precisely spoken. "We received your distress signal. We are here to assess the situation." Nara found her voice after a moment of stunned silence. "Admiral Park, I am Dr. Velnara, research coordinator for this station. You actually came. When someone calls for help against predators, we respond," Park said simply. "We need to discuss this threat you mentioned. We'll be sending a diplomatic team aboard your station." The communication ended abruptly, leaving them staring at a blank screen. Within minutes, their sensors detected a small craft launching from the massive human warship. It moved with purpose, docking with their station before anyone could properly prepare for the arrival. Belnara met the human delegation in the main conference chamber. She had expected perhaps 3 or 4 representatives. Instead, 12 humans entered the room, and the space suddenly felt much smaller. Admiral Park was even more intimidating in person. His uniform was dark and functional, with symbols that probably represented his achievements in war. Behind him stood other humans, each one carrying themselves with the confident posture of born predators. "Commander Kim Sojin, my operations specialist," Park said, gesturing to a human female with sharp eyes and quick movements. "Lieutenant Choi Min-ho, intelligence analysis, and Captain Song Ji-hee, special operations." Each introduction made more nervous. These humans moved with the fluid grace of hunting animals. Even their diplomatic representatives looked like they could tear apart the research station with their bare hands. "Please sit," Felnara offered, though she noticed the humans remained standing until Park took a seat. Even then, they positioned themselves to cover all exits from the room. "Tell us about the cracks," Park said without any small talk or pleasantries. Nara activated the holographic display showing the spread of Krek's destruction across the local galactic region. They appeared 5 years ago from beyond the galactic rim. They consume everything. Entire ecosystems. All life. Even the planetary crust itself. Park studied the display with the intensity of a scientist examining a specimen. Fleet composition. We estimate nearly 1,000 capital vessels with countless smaller support craft. Their ships are biological constructs that grow larger as they consume more material. Weapon systems, bioplasma cannons, corrosive spore clouds, and some kind of matter conversion beam that breaks down molecular bonds. Nara paused, watching Park's expression remain unchanged. Admiral, they have destroyed dozens of civilizations. Some of those species had significant military capabilities. Commander Kim stepped forward. What kind of military capabilities? The Harani had energy shields and fusion weapons. The Kitari possessed quantum tunneling technology. The Benthic Collective had mastered gravity manipulation. Belnara's voice grew quieter. None of it mattered. The cracks overwhelmed them all. Captain Song asked her first question. Do they take prisoners? No, they consume everything. There are no survivors from any system they've attacked. Something passed between the humans. A look that Nara couldn't interpret. It was like watching predators communicate through subtle signals. Admiral Park leaned back in his chair. How much time do we have? Our projections suggest they'll reach the outer Vani colonies in 3 weeks. Our homeworld. Velnar's voice broke slightly. Perhaps 6 weeks after that. Park nodded and turned to Commander Kim. Signal Earth Command. Tell them we need the Ghost Division. The reaction from the other humans was immediate and subtle. They all went very still, their expressions becoming even more focused. Whatever the Ghost Division was, it clearly carried significant meaning. Admiral, Velnar said carefully, I must ask, what is your species' experience with warfare? Park was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of terrible knowledge. Doctor, my species has been at war with itself for our entire recorded history. We fought with sticks and stones, with steel and gunpowder, with atomic weapons and anti-atom bombs. We've developed military tactics and strategies that most species would consider impossible. Lieutenant Choi added, we evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us. The weather, the geology, the other species, and eventually, each other. Survival required becoming very good at warfare. But we've also learned something important, Commander Kim said, her voice slightly softer. When peaceful species face extinction, someone needs to stand up for them. That's become our role in this galaxy. Belnara felt a strange mixture of hope and terror. These humans were clearly dangerous beyond anything the Galactic Registry had imagined, but they seemed genuinely committed to helping her people. What do you need from us? She asked. Everything you know about Craig's technology, tactics, and fleet movements, Park said. We'll also need detailed star charts of this region, and any intelligence about their command structure. Captain Song spoke up. Are there any other peaceful species in the Krex's path? Dozens of them. The Flowing Ones, the Christine Collective, several smaller civilizations. Park nodded grimly. Then we'll need to coordinate a broader defensive strategy. He stood up, and immediately all the other humans rose as well. Doctor, you should know that once we commit to this operation, we don't stop until the threat is eliminated. What does that mean exactly? Park's expression was carved from stone. It means the Craig's Dominion will cease to exist as a military threat. They'll either surrender unconditionally or be destroyed completely. There is no middle ground. The humans filed out of the conference room, leaving the alone with their thoughts through the observation windows. Belnara could see more human ships arriving, sleek destroyers, massive carriers, and vessels whose purpose she couldn't even guess. More Danny, she said quietly. What have we done? Her assistant's mental voice was filled with uncertainty. I don't know, Doctor, but I think we just summoned something far more dangerous than the cracks. As the human fleet took position around their station, Balaro wondered if they had simply traded one nightmare for another. The humans had promised to help, but they carried themselves like conquerors. Their ships looked like they could crack planets, and their casual discussion of warfare suggested a species that had turned violence into an art form. But as she watched the data streams showing Craig's forces continuing their advance toward innocent worlds, she realized they had no choice. The galaxy's peaceful species needed a protector, even if that protector was more terrifying than the threat they faced. Outside her window, the human fleet grew larger by the hour. Somewhere among those dark warships, The legendary Ghost Division was preparing for battle. Felnar could only hope that when the shooting started, the humans would remember which side they were supposed to be protecting. Dr. Velnara stared at the data streams flowing across her workstation. The soft blue glow from the screens cast shadows on her pale, elongated face. Her large eyes, adapted for the dim light of her homeworld, widened as she processed the terrible information. The research station, Harmony's Dream, had been her home for the past 3 years. It orbited the gas giant Kepler 442b, far from the busy trade routes of the galaxy, though had built it here specifically for that reason. They wanted peace and quiet to study the stars and catalog the countless species that lived among them. The Vani were not warriors. They had evolved from gentle plant eaters on a world where the most dangerous creature was about as threatening as a butterfly. Their tall, thin bodies and delicate features reflected millions of years of peaceful evolution. They communicated through soft telepathic whispers and had never known the concept of war until they met other species. Belnara's assistant, Mordani, floated into the research chamber. His movement was graceful, almost like swimming through air. "Doctor, the long-range sensors have detected more distress signals. The Kreks have destroyed another system." The weight of those words settled over Nara like a heavy blanket. The Kreks' dominion had appeared on the galactic scene only 5 years ago, but their impact had been devastating. They were everything they were not: aggressive, ruthless, and built for destruction. "Show me the data," Nara said, her mental voice barely a whisper. The holographic display activated, showing a 3-dimensional map of the local galactic region. Red dots marked the systems that had gone silent in the past months. There were too many of them. The Harani homeworld gone, the peaceful Quitari colonies silent, the ancient benthic archives destroyed. Each red dot represented billions of lives snuffed out by the Kreks war machine. The insectoid predators traveled in massive biohips that could strip entire planets of life within days. They consumed everything: plants, animals, even the soil itself, leaving behind dead rocks floating in space. "How long before they reach our territory?" Bella asked, though she already knew the answer would be terrible. Mani's mental projection carried the weight of doom. Their current trajectory suggests they will reach the outer Vani colonies in 6 weeks. Our homeworld. Perhaps 10 weeks after that. Velnara closed her eyes and tried to center herself. The Volani had no military. They had no weapons beyond simple tools. Their entire philosophy was built around understanding and peaceful coexistence. When they had first encountered hostile species, they had simply withdrawn to safer regions of space. But there was nowhere left to withdraw to. The Kreks were systematically eliminating entire species. They showed no interest in negotiation, no mercy for civilians, no respect for ancient cultures or knowledge. They were a force of pure consumption, turning the galaxy's diversity into fuel for their expansion. "Have the other peaceful species responded to our requests for alliance?" she asked, though hope was fading from her voice. "The ethereals have retreated to their pocket dimension. The Christine Collective has gone into hibernation mode. The flowing ones have hidden in the gas clouds of the Spiral Nebula." Manny paused. "None of them have military capabilities that could challenge the cracks." Nara stood and walked to the observation window. Outside, the gas giant's swirling storms painted beautiful patterns in shades of orange and purple. For a moment, she let herself imagine that the universe was still the peaceful place she had grown up believing it to be. But reality would not be denied. Somewhere out there, the Kreks fleets were moving closer. Their biohips grew larger by consuming the remnants of destroyed worlds. Their numbers increased as they converted captured resources into new weapons of war. "There must be something," she whispered to herself. "Somewhere in the galaxy, there must be a species capable of stopping them." An idea began to form in her mind. It was desperate, perhaps even foolish, but it was the only option left. She turned back to her workstation and accessed the Galactic Registry's main database. The registry contained information about every known species in the galaxy. Most entries were marked as peaceful, neutral, or sadly extinct. She filtered the search parameters, looking for any species classified as having significant military capability. Most of the results were disappointing. The Korvoxy Empire had collapsed centuries ago. The War Masters of Riel had destroyed themselves in civil conflict. The destroyer caste of Vega had evolved beyond physical form. Then she found something that made her pause. It was buried deep in the restricted files, marked with warning symbols in 17 different languages. The classification codes were unlike anything she had ever seen. Species: human, Homo sapiens. Origin: Sol system, Sector 7729. Classification: extreme hazard. Class to Deathworlder. Status quarantined by Galactic Council Resolution 2847. Population estimated 12 billion. Technology level. Tier 4 advancing rapidly. Military capability unknown. Insufficient data. Warning: do not initiate contact without Council approval. Bella read the entry 3 times before its implications sank in. A Class Deathworlder classification was almost unheard of. Most species evolved on worlds that the Galactic Council classified as Class 1 or 2 peaceful environments that encouraged cooperation and gentle development. Class 13 meant these humans had evolved on a world so dangerous that survival required becoming apex predators. The warning labels suggested that even the Galactic Council, with all its power and knowledge, was afraid of making contact with them. She accessed the restricted files, using her research credentials to dig deeper. What she found made her breath catch in her throat. The humans' homeworld was described as a nightmare environment where 99% of all species that had ever existed had died in massive extinction events. The dominant species had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic catastrophes, and countless wars against each other. Their biology was terrifying: dense bone structure, redundant organ systems, rapid healing, and aggressive territorial instincts. They were pack hunters who had somehow developed advanced technology. Without losing their predatory nature, the few contact reports in the files painted a picture of a species that viewed conflict as a natural state of existence. They had weapons that could crack planets, ships that could move faster than light, and a military structure that had never known true defeat. But there was something else in the reports. Hidden between the warnings and classifications, she found mentions of humans defending weaker species during first contact scenarios. They seemed to have some kind of protective instinct toward non-aggressive civilizations. Nara made her decision. She opened a communication channel toward the Sol system, knowing it might be the last act of her civilization. The message she composed was simple and desperate to the human species of Sol system. We are the Vani of Kepler 442b. Our people face extinction from an aggressive force called the Krex Dominion. We have no weapons, no military, no way to defend ourselves. If your species values the existence of peaceful civilizations, we beg for your help. We offer all our knowledge and resources in exchange for protection. Please respond if you receive this message. She transmitted the signal toward the quarantine system and settled in to wait. The message would take months to reach its destination, and months more for any response to return. By then, the cracks might have already arrived. As she watched the transmission disappear into the vast darkness of space, Nara wondered if she had just doomed her people, or saved them. Only time would tell if the galaxy's most dangerous Deathworlders would answer their call for help.